Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode about the movies with William Fletcher as visual. I am your host, William Fletcher, and I am joined this week by Mr. Harry joining back again.
The King has returned. I don't know, because I've been on like a few episodes now where a few is an underestimate. I never know what to say, and I feel like I've said the King has returned a couple of times. And now I'm just what's my intro? So I might just like play a soundbite song, like WWE Batista, like I walk for miles inside this pit of danger. But yeah, other than that, then we're sweet.
For this week's episode, we are going to be looking at the film Daybreakers, because out this week is the new Ryan Coogler film, which is called Sinners, which is a vampire film. That's what Daybreakers is. It's a vampire film. It loosely, tangentially connected to this week, to the film we're covering. But I also wanted to sort of talk about this film in general. It's an interesting film, and I like it. Harry, you sort of mentioned that you were aware of it, like you sort of
because when there was a period of me, or when I don't know, something clicked in my head when I was about 11, and I'm like, film's good. I love films, but like again, I've always leant towards comedy and leant away from horror. Whether there's some underlying reason, I don't know. I'm not a therapist.
A big horror.
But I went through Willem Dafoe and had a bit of a look into what his work was, and I'd seen this and I'd read a bit of a synopsis, and then I also saw it come up on like TikTok when you're watching something, and it's like then got like the robot voiceover where it's like, these people need blood to, and I'm like, I don't want to ruin that for myself, but so I'm aware of it. Well, I was aware of it, and sort of the overall concept, I guess.
So, for those of you who don't know what this film is, Daybreakers is a 2009 Australian film released in 2009, which they filmed in my home city of Brisbane. They filmed it there.
Wait, really? I feel like I can't tell.
No, you really cannot tell
having lived in Brisbane for quite a while, like I lived in Brisbane for a few years recently, and there's just no way. Like, I understand. I didn't know that. I knew it was filmed in Australia, but especially Brisbane in the early 2000s was like a lot of the Brisbane skyline that exists now didn't in the early 2000s. It was still very like sort of older buildings. There was a few tall. I think Q1, or no, not Q1. That's Gold Coast. What's it called? The One, the really tall one. I think that was there, and a few others. But the bus building maybe, but other than that.
Yeah, I've got up the filming locations. So they filmed some of it at Village Roadshow Studios, which on the Gold Coast. But they also apparently did some filming in Riparian Plaza and on Eagle Street, and they also filmed at the
Eagle Street
train as well. Yeah,
the Rabina. Wait. Which scene directly was Rabina train? Because I fucking almost lived at that train station. I'd go to the footy there.
I'm not entirely sure.
Was it scenes of like where the sub walk? Was it like, I feel like it would have been like sub walk sort of stuff.
I don't know. I'm trying to see if I can find anything on it. This is just what it's got listed on the IMDb page, but that's apparently where they filmed it. So, which is weird because you don't really get films made in the country. They usually go down to somewhere in Melbourne or Sydney or coast even to stuff. That you get films made.
I've had a bit of a look into it and I've had a bit of a look into it as we're speaking, and people saying that you can clearly see the pedestrian walk on Adelaide Street, which I still live on Adelaide. I don't know. That always gives me a bit of like, oh, that's really cool. When I see a film, I guess, produced in somewhere that I'm familiar with. Having lived in Brisbane and considering making short films, you do have to look at the city as if it's a different lens. So you can have it filmed in Brisbane using specific pockets. I think there's a bit with Willem Dafoe where he's in Fortitude Valley. And I'm like, well, that if you need if you really want to film a vampire or a zombie film anywhere, Fortitude Valley is your place.
But yeah, it filmed it in Brisbane, which is not a thing that happens generally. Harry's just sent something to the chat.
Yeah, that was
I
just to
presume the
see
scene
that it
you're
is
talking
clearly,
about.
is I believe set in Fortitude Valley. That's the Valley train station. You can tell, or is that Central Station?
It looks. I think this looks more like Fortitude Valley. I feel like
Yeah, because the signs
just
in the
wet
back are
pillars.
so clinically, and the frosted glass. Yeah,
Yeah, like that
I
just
just thought
seems
that
more
would
Fortitude
help
Valley.
visualize the idea of how the fact that is Brisbane. I think the color grading helps disconnecting it because Fortitude Valley is actually a very warm toned train station.
Yeah,
everything's orange and yellow and red. So
the light, and there's also like the sun coming in as well. Like there's a lot of sun that comes in as well. And I'm just watching it, and it does really look like this all just looks like stuff that I've seen at just like the pillars and everything. I mean, I guess to talk about Australian films in general, I feel like you're probably more familiar with Australian films than I. In sort of, you'll have definitely watched a lot more than I have.
It is something that I have. I not only extensively studied in our second year, when I was doing an associate's degree. I didn't really want to do the associate's degree. I had to do a bunch of graphic design, and then I just got sick of it. But we did study Australian films. But it's also something that I've delved in personally quite a bit. You can look at films such as like Slow Hands, great Australian film. Obviously, you've got really larger cult classics like Red Dog that's incredibly popular here that not many people overseas maybe have seen. And then you look sort of smaller and things such as obviously The Castle is quite large, but then you're looking at things like Footy Legends. It's a great film. A lot of Australian films are comedies. You've got, again, more dramatic ones. I think recently How to Make Gravy was adapted into a film, which is great film. Picnic at Hanging Rock. There's obviously there's a plethora, but yeah.
I mean, to get sort of stuck into Daybreakers a bit more, it's it's an Australian film. Released 2009. It's like in terms of who they've got to be in it. I mean, you've got Ethan Hawke.
The director's
in there
first feature film as well.
Lee. Oh yeah, the Spierig brothers.
Well, for that,
probably not.
For the Spierig brothers. I'm just going to follow you because I can remember their name. But the directors, this being their first feature length film, being able to pull Willem Dafoe is huge.
That's pretty, and get Sam Neill in there as well, who is a very. I mean, I guess Sam Neill is. He is. Is he Australian or is he from New Zealand? Because I always forget.
We'll just say a bit of Anzac about him, as in Australia or New Zealand. We're just going to go with.
It says here he's a New Zealand actor. He's apparently an New Zealand actor, and apparently, so he was born in Ireland to an English mother and New Zealand father, and he moved to Christchurch with his family in the 50s. So
and you also got great actor, Michael Dorman, obviously. Would you classify this film as falling under the banner of horror? It's incredibly gory. I think it would fall into the category that you say doesn't really exist. That's thriller.
I wouldn't say it's horror in the strict. It's not to scare you in the way that a lot of horror is trying to.
It's trying to make you feel uncomfortable. It's incredibly gory, and there's also this one jump cut in it that makes this snap cut that makes no sense and is purely just for jump scare factor. And it's when she's on the hill, You're on the hill. You're on a hill with
yeah.
like zero cover. How does someone sneak up on you? You're on a hill. Like, I'm sorry, but like you can see everything that's coming, right? Like I'm just this film is full of like large potholes or plot holes that I think.
Oh, so you were not a
continuity
fan then?
error.
Is that
No.
is
I
that
wasn't not a fan. I don't.
just
I'm strictly not. I'm typically not a fan of gore. I like Invincible, and that's about it. And that's because it's animated, really.
yeah, but that's animated.
But
Yeah, exactly. It's not quite
yeah,
quite the same thing.
I don't. I just think. I think gore largely, especially when used in a sense to try to make you feel uncomfortable, feels cheap, tacky, and bad. The idea that the vampires' heads explode is so insane. It's just so comically crazy. And again, we'll look into gore in a comedy sense. One of my favorite comedy films is Tropic Thunder. It's incredibly gory. Like it becomes.
Oh yeah,
There are parts where it's like very gory, but at the same time, it's used for comedy, and I think again this is my bias showing through for comedy, but also it's hard. There are definitely great examples of gore that can be used, but for great dramatic effect, whether it be horror or unsettling, just in general to achieve a purpose to your audience. But I do think that it needs to be far further understated than heads exploding. I think the way they do burning up in this film is pretty good. It's very Voldemort at the end of Harry Potter Deathly Hallows Part 2, but it's done well. Yeah, so it's not it's not something that I dislike about the film. I think that I think the gore is something I dislike because I think it's used. And if we really want to sink my teeth straight into it, I think there are parts that need to be gory. I mean, the idea of farming humans, which again is done so unsustainably, and I don't know if becoming a vampire just makes you lose fucking brain cells, but the idea of just let's just kill the humans outright. Let's just drain them for their blood, keep them in a suspended state, drain all of their blood, and then ship them away. As if humans can't regenerate blood. As if blood isn't like a renewable thing that humans can just like replenish with food and existing for a while. Why would you not just drain a little, keep them just enough alive, keep them restrained, keep feeding them, and then drain them some more, keep them just enough alive? Then you've got like almost an infinite supply of blood until the humans die. And I'm not pro farming the humans. I think this film actually raises a great ethical question about what would happen if vampires really existed. Because you would think largely the pros outweigh the cons. The cons being that you have to inhumanely farm human beings, which a lot of people would go, that's foul, but then look at what you do to animals, like currently in the world. This is the way that a lot of animals, chickens, or a lot of livestock completely, I'd say largely in this country, it can be, and not in this country specifically, but it can be done humanely. But look at the larger industry is disgusting. And it's not the same. I'm not saying it's the same. Human beings, it's a lot harder to justify. I don't think there is any justification, but a lot of people would justify that for immortality.
And I'll say that we've never really covered like a vampire film on the podcast. I've covered zombie films before, and you've sort of mentioned off record that you're not like the biggest, like you don't dislike zombies, but you're sort of not like a big.
It's a cheap genre. It's a cheap genre, and then that's always been my argument. Is I always thought zombie films were, I have nothing to write about. Why not do a zombie movie? And then you can really just copy paste any situation into that. I think a lot of zombie films are done really well. You can look at Shaun of the Dead, and I'm sure there's multiple others, but it's the only one coming to my mind. Obviously, there's Zombieland, but I don't really care about that. That's a bit more slapstick comedy that I think falls on the rather cheaper side of comedy. Whereas, again, Shaun of the Dead is one of the great. Obviously, you got Dawn of the Dead, which inspired Shaun of the Dead. I think vampires fall under a very similar category. Vampires, they fall under two ways of either sunlight makes them twinkle or sunlight kills them. And twinkle is just a reference to Twilight there. And yeah, the vampires can be used in a very similar way to zombies. I think is either a cheap plot device or I think this film does it in a really great way to bring up the conversation, or also to see what would the vampires really, how would they affect, and what would play out, and what is the largest the fact that a lot of the geography is blacked out. They have blackout cars and blackout tunnels. They have a subwalk, so you can walk underground without being burnt by the sun.
Yeah.
They have protests and legislation and being written into like that kind of, instead of it just being like a quick outbreak and everything happening over the span of a week, which I think a lot of zombie or a day, or a lot of zombie and vampire films tend to follow.
Because this sort of film is like, it's sort of like a zombie film but with vampire. The difference is vampires and they can problem solve. They've got problems.
They're also the majority.
Ability. Yeah.
They're also largely the majority, like of an intelligent species.
Yeah.
Well, not in this film, but
I find interesting isn't really as much of a market for vampire movies in the way that there are for zombie movies. I feel like you get a lot more vampire TV shows and books than you do movies, whereas zombies sort of dominate the market. Which I find interesting, really.
Well, I think it comes down to filmmaking at the end of the day. Look at vampires are typically cold, dark, hard to shoot. Like vampires for television, they work because vampires, being an intelligent species, it's not an event that's playing out as much as a story being told. Whereas zombies, zombie outbreak, they're events, right? They're events that play out over. I guess unless you're looking at something like The Walking Dead or Zombieland, but largely it's a zombie outbreak that has happened. Whereas like a vampire it's also they sneak around. You've got great vampire content, What We Do in the Shadows, but do you know genuinely what I think, at least in the modern media, Twilight? Trying to do a vampire film after Twilight, not that it's good or that it's bad, but it just had this absolute chokehold on pop culture in like the early 2010s.
Yeah, I think Twilight sort of poisoned the waters. And people are like, no, we don't want that anymore now.
They absolutely poisoned sort of the waters for vampire films. But again, it also falls under vampires are largely sexualized. And it's going to sound outrageous, but they are in Twilight and they are in a lot of books. It's always sort of an underlying romance between the woman and the vampire. Which is weird. What We Do in the Shadows is possibly, I think it's maybe the best example of how to do vampires. I think between that, or there's this film. Have you ever seen Vampires Suck?
I've not seen it.
Being a direct parody of Twilight, but it is hilarious. Like, it's done really well. It's before a bunch of I think it's the last of the decent parodies that have come out before, like, you know how they did like a weird Hangover one and a weird Ted one and like all these weird parodies that didn't really make sense?
Yeah.
But things, because if you look at like pure parodies, you're looking at Scary Movie, superhero movie, I guess Vampires Suck. But I think it also does a really good job of putting vampires in this world where no one really takes them that seriously. It's like, yeah, they're there, but like we outnumber them 20-1. So like, all you got to do is stick a bit of wood through it and it dies. Like, that's kind of a huge fucking weakness. But in this film is much more of like a human rights discussion, but not only human, but then vampire rights discussion. It also follows suits a lot of just dumbness, like just real idiocracy that happens in this film. But I think that, I think the concept of vampires farming humans, but then also running out of humans, and what are they going to do to continue surviving? And then you've also got this weird subplot between this father and daughter that you really can't sympathize with because you just hate this guy. And it's like there to try to give this dude a little bit of depth, but it feels out of place.
You were sort of mentioning earlier about vampires how they're sort of
The sexualization.
more sexy. The sexualization, yeah. Because you can't really do that with zombies because it would just be weird. And I think
And Nick Frost.
that, but it's sort of this thing of like, I think the thing with zombies is because there's so many different types of zombies that have sort of culturally become ingrained pop culture and media. Like you've got Dead, but you've got like I Am Legend, you've got Zombieland, you've got Shaun of the Dead, you've got all these different types of zombies that people. Whereas with vampires, there aren't really as many. There aren't as many major vampires that like are culturally significant that people could point to. Yeah, that sort of you can't that you can point to and be like, this is an iconic. You sort of got Dracula and Nosferatu and like Edward from Twilight. Like those are sort of like the three major ones that everybody knows. Sure. So yeah, it sort of puts that into a box of that's probably why, because people will sort of just hear about the default to it is they'll think of one of those three things, and that probably not going to be as appealing to people who don't like Twilight. Twilight was such a big thing, and a lot of people do not like Twilight, so it's sort of if people just sort of immediately associate with Twilight, and then
no, and that's fully understandable. I think zombies benefit from the fact that one, they're not sexualized, and two, one, they're not sexualized, and two, they don't really. There hasn't been sort of a piece of media besides again The Walking Dead, but that's largely television series and game, whatever. But there's been no piece of media that's really dominated zombies. You know what I mean? It's a bit more of an even playing field, where Twilight sort of dominated for better or for worse. I think largely for worse, although we wouldn't have vampires suck, so I don't know. Dominated, I guess, that genre. And I think it's an interesting concept what this film brings out, and I think largely I'm going to get some of the negative stuff out of the way. There's some shots where you can clearly see cameras, camera arms, camera mounts. I think there are certain moments where a lot of the filmmaking, they go with ideas, again, like the chick on the hill and how he gets snuck up on, or how for some reason there's a scene there where they're in the house and like the back guy gets into the house without setting off the alarm, except every other person that has ever come into that house has set off the alarm, like has alerted someone, like without like how does that make sense? That doesn't make any sense. Unless he left the door open, but like that's not explained. That's not even. And the twist at the end of the film, spoiler alert, I think is like everyone knows. Anyone who's ever seen any film ever can see that twist coming. So the fact that they draw it out for us, I feel like was done sort of. I don't know. It could have been executed better. Again, I'm saying this is a bloke sitting in his bedroom, so it's not like I've made this film. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, there are better ways to execute that sort of twist. Sometimes a shockingly weird twist reveal can be done quite well. Look at The Prestige. The way that the twist is revealed in that film is just outrageous. But it works because the whole film is just kind of crazy. Like the speed of that film makes you feel like it's crazy. This film jumps between multiple worlds. Some of the heads exploding makes not a whole lot of sense to me. But again, I can't. I really do love the idea of do we keep doing this? Do we profit? Do we what's the social? It's more of a social dilemma drama than it is a direct anything. So I think it does that well. Like but there is, again, to not completely shit on it. Sorry for my French, but at the end of the film, there's a beautifully twisted sequence of them attacking each other that is just shot really well. Like it looks, what would I say? Well, what's the word? Renaissanceian, but like it looks like it would be something painted on the roof of the Sistine Chapel. Like it's done beautifully. then again, you've got scenes where like car tires are deflating and then the back ones are inflating, even though it said the front ones were inflating on the screen. And you're just like, God, that's not that hard to like. Surely we can. I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting. That's what I give it. I don't think it's done particularly well, but I don't think it's done particularly like it. It has really good strengths and then really bad weaknesses. And I think a lot of the weaknesses just comes down to like little continuity things, which is not something I typically care about. But this film really relies on what it's trying to say. That's the whole point. So, in that case, it matters.
This like it is sort of something novel about it being filmed in Australia and in a part of the country that I live in. So I think there is something very novel about that of seeing a place that I know and being able to sort of look at that and be like, hey, I know that place, you know. I think in general, I think there's a lot of really great creativity involved, like because the world is overrun by vampires, they have to sort of come up with solutions of how to go out during the day. So there's, you know, the cars with the UV like windows and stuff so they don't burn up, which I think is really great. In fact, in the overall sort of design of the world, I really like. I think there's a lot of really just in the way it's sort of this sort of futuristic sci-fi design of the world. I think is really great and gives it something, helps it stand out more.
No, I agree. I think that there is, and I think that again comes down to also the fact that it's trying to say something. It's not look at Robert Pattinson, look at his shining body. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. It's not trying to be it sort of there's a bit more to it than it's just, oh, I'm a vampire who you know, glitters during the day. You know, there's a sort of a bit more to it than that.
I guess to get into at least some of the teeth. Well, I think let's speak on some of the performances. I think Willem Dafoe is great in whatever he does. He brings a bit of depth to his character, which obviously requires the depth.
Yeah, I think he is I think in general Willem Dafoe is a fantastic actor.
I'm a little bit of a Willem Dafoe fanboy. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't think I've ever seen him in something and not thought he was good, not great. I think he is, just in general a really solid actor, and I can't really think of a bad performance he's given. And he's in a lot of things, so it would like if there was like a bad performance, but I can't think of a performance I can think of like that I think is bad. He's great. I think Ethan Hawke is a really solid actor. I don't think he gets like massive amounts of I don't know. I don't feel like he ever is sort of in the conversation of like great actors, like all time sort of great actors. I feel like like this isn't like an acting heavy movie, you know, in terms of like being a strong piece of filmmaking. There's enough about it that I can sort of be like, because I don't need every film to be that. I don't need every film to be like every performance is just like this all-time great performance that, you know, makes me reevaluate, you know, film and look at the medium different. You know, I don't need anything. I don't need that.
No, and again, no film is without its flaws. By the sounds of at least our conversation here, you seem to enjoy it a little further than I. I thought, again, there were some moments, some pivotal moments that I thought were just like the idea that they wouldn't check whether or not he'd actually ended the phone call. And the entire sort of twist and villain at the end of the film just feels sort of poor. The idea that being shot into sun and then dropped in water will turn you back to human, I think is interesting. I think the idea that he was only able to recreate that experiment there was just fucking outrageous. Like, you could literally do the experiment of some tarps and like a bath and or like a pool, some tarps and that's it. Stand under the tarp, step out into the sun, get burnt, jump into the pool. The idea that the heart rate might like there's just a few ideas that that are made in the film that are really, really, really important to the overall, I guess, narrative and conversation of it that I think just aren't executed well. That being said, when it comes to the genre of vampires that I typically don't care for, aside from again some comedy options, it's all right. Like it does it again. The fact of just what it's trying to say isn't enough for me to say it's a great film, but is enough for me to I was able to watch it without going, oh, I need it, because I did want to see. I genuinely wanted to see, well, how is this going to be resolved? Because the idea is so intriguing. I think it's shot similarly to a lot of vampire films in the sense that it's incredibly cold, and I think whether that's obviously done in post. But if you look at again the color grading, it's green, black, blue, and then the only times that it starts to become warm is when someone turns human. There is a sense of warmth that comes to the screen. When humans are on screen, it's warmer, and obviously out in daylight, it tends to be a little warmer. But largely, it's shot incredibly similar to something like Twilight, which it kind of has to be. The vampires have claimed this colder color grading, I guess. Do you have anything really else you wanted to touch on specifically, or?
I really, I think it's just really has a lot of just sort of. I think it's really fun. I think there's a lot of fun with it as sort of.
Absolutely. I just had a bit of a negative rant then, but I do agree it is really fun.
Yeah, I'll say you have sounded considerably more negative on this film than I have, but I think the fact that you are qualifying it sounds like you don't dislike it or think it's bad. You just there were sort of these problems that were.
And I think that also is because I think comedy largely masks a lot of flaws. I mean, look at some of the greatest comedy films of all time are incredibly flawed, but the fact that you're laughing or that it holds a value to you personally helps decredit and devalue a lot of those flaws. Not to say that some of these, like a lot of the flaws that I've mentioned as well, have also been to add to conversation largely then, because again, things like being able to see the camera arm in a couple of shots or continuity errors isn't something that I typically care about. I think if the film is saying a good enough story, and it is, so it's not something I care about. It was more to sort of add to that conversation. But I think, again, and I said it as a negative, but to me, it's weirdly both a positive. The fact that the vampires' heads explode is outrageous in both good and bad ways. It's outrageous in the fact that it's trying to be a serious film, but it's good in the fact that it's really funny when it happens. At least for me, especially at the end of the film where he gets the stake in his arm, and it's like this delayed explosion that everyone usually explodes instantly, but him it's like a delayed sort of, oh, that's funny. I saw that and I was like, that's well done. That's funny. Like they've done well to sort of add that in, whether intentional or not, I think. So I think it does lend itself to having a lot of fun, and I think that's what falls under that classic sort of Australian-made film is there are moments where it's just, fuck it, let's do this with it. Like, let's do this without swearing, the whole sort of idea of screw it. We want this in the film. We want their heads to explode because it'll be more. Plethora of other Australian-made films, there are moments that are entirely extra for no reason, where they take real creative liberty, and I think that's because they need to do something, or they feel as if they have the need to do something. So it's not just another movie that ends up on Stan that people, I don't know, will see if there's nothing else on. you know, a daytime Channel 7 sort of movie. You know what I mean? And it does that. It does a good job of having a conversation. And I'm happy to give the ranking. We do. It's been a while. I'm going to dust off my shoulders. Has it been? We do halves, right? We do like half a point.
I mean, I don't do halves, but Barney does, and other people do. So, yeah.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going
you
to. Then I'm just going to
can go half.
An incredibly strong 6 to a soft 7. Strong 6, light 7.
Okay, that makes sense for you. It doesn't. Yeah, because you've sort of you have been making sort of some complaints, some sort of issues with the film, which I don't think, which I think it's fair.
I think it also comes down to sort of preference as well. Yeah, it's preference based.
Yeah, I mean, I give it a solid 8 out of 10. I think it's really, really good. I think it's just a really great film. I really enjoy. I mean, I'm trying to find more Australian films to watch just in general because I haven't really seen that many in the grand scheme of things, and I think there's a lot that Australian cinema has to offer. But yeah, I just really like it. I think there's some really fun. There's some really fun scenes. There's that scene that you posted earlier when they filmed in Fortation blood, and there's like this big frenzy over this blood, and they rip it and they get it all over them and they go sort of mental about it. So I think there's a lot there's a lot of really great elements. There's enough sort of in it thinking to have a really good time with it, that I can maybe look some flaws with it and think it's good.
Film is actually a great commentary on the film industry as a whole. As if we're bleeding a genre, let's say superhero, or just Hollywood dry with we want more, give me more. What do you mean this percent? What do you mean this many? That was a piss take. That when I started saying that, it was a piss take, and then I convinced myself that it was actually a good opinion. So it's a great commentary on the current media landscape. We want more. We have it in our pocket, and it's constantly going on in our brain at all times.
Yeah. I think there's just a lot of sort of really solid moments in it, and I just think it's a really fun time, and I sort of wish we got sort of more movies, even though it's kind of ruined them for everyone, really.
When do you reckon's the threshold where you can start making like good decent vampire films again outside of like proper dramatic vampire films where Twilight won't be brought into the conversation? Because it's been almost
we've been
having like 15 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Nearly, it'll be close to 20 years. It'll be 20 years in like 3 years time. I mean, we're sort of in a bit of a vampire sort of period right now. We've got like Abigail came out last year, and Nosferatu and Salem's Law, and so we've sort of got some vampire films now, and we're tying this into the release of a new vampire film, Sinners, by Ryan Coogler. I don't know if you have heard of this film.
I have heard of the film, and I am familiar with obviously Ryan Coogler. Yeah, I don't know if it's something I'm going to go to the cinemas to see, but again, that also comes down to my preference of vampires as sort of like it doesn't intrigue me as much as something else might. But that being said, might definitely still be worth a watch. I do think currently, we are seeing. You are correct. We are seeing like a bit of a vampire renaissance at the moment. Between that or Cannibal. Especially in the last 5 years, it seemed like almost at least one film nominated in the Oscars each year had something to do with cannibals, or not specifically the Academy Awards, but it ends with Us. I think what was the menu? Like, there's a lot where it's like weirdly cannibalistic. There's a real desire to feast on humans at the moment. I'm not loving it.
Yeah. And we might be about to do a sort of pendulum swing back to zombies with 28 Years Later coming out in a couple of months' time. But every now and again there's a pendulum swing between vampires and zombies. So I mean, I guess we'll see where things go. Do you want to just quickly talk about Ryan Coogler as a filmmaker? Because we covered Black Panther
I'd be
a
happy
couple
to.
years ago now. When we did a Black Panther podcast, we looked at Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which if I recall, we were both very complimentary of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I certainly was a
It's a great film.
big fan. I thought it was a
Yeah.
surprisingly good film after every issue they seem to have. Creed, I remember thinking Creed was very solid. Yeah, I mean, where do you stand
Creed's
on...
a great series. I think something Ryan Coogler does really well is he seems to have Michael B. Jordan in almost anything he does fucking ever. But also,
he's been in pretty much every film he's made except he's been in every Ryan Coogler film, hasn't he?
No,
He was in his first
maybe
film station. He was in Creed, and he was in both Black Panther films. He had a cameo in the second one.
Also, I believe Ryan Coogler was a producer on the Space Jam with LeBron. And as much as I wish I could go back in time and never watch that film, but again, I think he was a producer on that. Google. Yeah, if you look into Ryan Coogler's film, it doesn't say what role he played, but Space Jam is there. So there you are. But yeah, I think something Coogler does really well is there's always conversation, and I've said put a fucking conversation counter on this bloody podcast, but I think he always really discusses culture, like especially African American culture in his films. So I'll be really keen to see how that sort of plays into the trope of vampire to Sinners and to that style. Is Michael B. Jordan is the lead in this film, isn't he?
Yes.
In the upcoming Sinners.
And
because I've seen the poster. I love Haley Steinfeld. But I also I'm a fan of Michael B. Jordan as well. Like I love his work. So it'd be really, really interesting to see. This looks incredibly action.
Sort of what I've seen from the trailers, it's more action orientated, which I'm not sure how I feel about, but it sort of depends how they see what they do with it, I guess. Because I've seen the trailers, I've seen bits of the trailers, and so I do have an interest in seeing it. I'm interested to see how it is. I think it's got reviews out already. So people have started to see it. So it's currently got an 83 rating on Metacritic, which is it's pretty solid, and it's currently got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes from 45 critics.
45.
Yeah, I mean it's not like a massive number of critics, but it's still pretty for 45 critics having that high already is pretty. It's not too bad, but yeah. I mean, final things you want to say before I wrap this up? Or
touch grass to anyone listening. Go out, explore the world, live your life. Watch Danny Deckchair. Good. It's a perfectly okay Australian film. That's about it. Watch Bullet Train. If you haven't seen it, watch our episode on Bullet Train.
Yeah. And then you can listen to our commentary track we did on Bullet Train. It's still up on the in your podcast catcher. It'll be in there somewhere.
Great episode.
Cool. Yeah, thank you all for listening to this week. I hope you have enjoyed listening. Thank you, Harry, for joining me. Is there any sort of thing you'd like to? Is there anything more to say or that?
As always, thank you. As always, thank you for having me.
So yeah, thank you all for tuning in this week. Listen to the back catalogue. There's 180 something episodes now for you to listen to, so plenty of variety. The show is now on YouTube if you're one of those people who likes to listen to podcasts on YouTube. Almost back catalog, a couple that aren't because I have to fix those up. And there's also 2 commentary track episodes which have not been uploaded because of copyright reasons. And if I did upload those, I'd be fucked. So I'd get fucked over for that. So I can't upload those ones to YouTube because it's basically just there's audio from the film, so we can't really have them. So if you want to be one of those people and you listen to podcasts on YouTube, then go do that if you want. But yeah, thank you all for listening to this week's episode, and I'll see you all in the next one.